Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America, online, thisweekinamerica.us. Jeanette Blohm has been called a true Renaissance woman, an artist, writer, investor, winner of the National Association for Professional Women's 2013-14 Professional Woman of the Year Award in Leadership, Literature, and Art. She has a bachelor's degree from Adelphi University, where she studied German and social science. She studied art at the New York School of Painting and Drawing, as well as the New York Horticultural Society. Living in New York, Eve takes inspiration from the natural beauty of Central Park and many art galleries and museums throughout Manhattan. She's the author of a number of haikus, short stories, and essays. Among her works, Central Park, Rhapsody, and Oasis, a collection of poems. Jeanette Blohm joining us on This Week in America. Eve, welcome to the program. It is our pleasure to have you with us on the show today.
Thank you.
You have done so much. I mentioned all of the various ventures that you've had over the last couple of decades. In fact, since 1965, when you started studying art. The new book...
I started studying art because I started first with crafts.
Okay.
I did needlepoint, cross stitch, and knitting.
Yeah, I was going to say you have done so much, many different forms of art. Talk about that creative interest that you have. We're talking about books that you've written on the program today, but you've done so much more. Really, the whole creative process obviously has been a big part of your life.
Well, I think it all started with my dad, because my dad was a German refugee. He came here in 1940 after he married my mother in Cuba.
And obviously, he encouraged this curious side of you.
He encouraged me.
Yes.
He sort of inspired me to use my imagination, and my mother told me to keep learning.
And we see that in your work. People have talked about it, and one artist described it as her words project a beauty that is enlightening, soulful, and can be described as transcendental. You really see something that most of us would look at that and not even see that. Does that come from those early ages, the power of observation, of seeing something a little below the surface that most of us wouldn't see?
My mother encouraged me to observe. She pointed things out to me.
And we see that in the book Central Park, Rhapsody and Oasis. And let's talk about that. That is really, Central Park is a magical place, isn't it? And it's never the same. You could go back, you could go at 10 o'clock this morning, go back at 4 o'clock.
I can't go back anymore.
You don't go back to Central Park?
Because I found it to be a wonderful oasis when Bill and I, my husband, went there very often on the weekends, and we spent a lot of time walking throughout the park.
And I'm sure there are memories. In fact, you touch on those in the book Central Park, Rhapsody and Oasis. Let's talk about why that was such a magical place for you and Bill, that you would go there and spend a lot of time. And I got the impression by reading the book, just sort of going and observing, just being there and soaking in all Central Park and what humanity had to offer.
Well, there were young people on rollerblades, and Bill and I sat by the carousel. And we fed popcorn to pigeons.
And that's something that, anybody that's been to Central Park, you remember the people, you remember the animals there, and they really come to life as we're reading the collection that you've put together. It's called Central Park, Rhapsody and Oasis. Our guest on the program is Eve J. Blohm. Several websites I'll give you for information, not just on this book, but on all of her art, which is available. Eve Jeanette Blohm, and Blohm is BLOHM.com, or EveJBlomBooks.com. The books are available all across the country. You can go to Amazon. You can go to bookventure.com. You can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. And Eve, you were mentioning that you're on Facebook as well, and people can follow you and get information at Facebook as well.
Yeah, I put, I think, 3 or more poems on Facebook yesterday.
That is good, and you can follow that by going to Facebook, and it's Eve J. Blohm, and that's BLOHM. I mentioned in the beginning that so much of, you were in the right city for creativity in New York. Talk about the inspiration you get, not just from the memories from Central Park, but all the museums and the art galleries and just the people, the humanity that you see in New York City. It has to be the ideal place for a creative person.
Well, I think I got my first hint of creativity going to the Garment Center with my dad, because he was a woman's coat manufacturer in the Garment Center with my uncle. And I went there and I did some work for my dad.
And those memories are obviously still vivid. In the book, Central Park, Rhapsody and Oasis, you talk about the city ages. Talk a little bit about how New York City has changed. How long have you lived there?
I was born in Harlem in 1943.
So you have lived in New York your entire life. Talk a little bit, and you mentioned that in the poem, The City Ages. How has the city changed, let's say even let's say since 9/11, how has the city changed to you, someone who's a native New Yorker?
I was married in the St. Moritz Hotel on Central Park South on July 11th, 1971 with my husband, and it was raining that day, and I'll never forget that day because it was raining, and then it stopped raining in the evening toward our ceremony, and my knees were shaking, and I looked up, and there was a beautiful rainbow.
And that's obviously been an important part of your life. What a great story! What great timing to be able to go out and look up and to see the rainbow. Our guest on the program is Eve Blohm. The book we're talking about is Central Park, Rhapsody and Oasis, but so many more books and paintings and information available at the websites, and you can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. I mentioned the creativity and the spark that it gives you in living in New York City. Let's talk a little bit about Central Park, because you talk about that in the book, the changing of seasons and how in autumn there's always time to find hope when the autumn leaves fall. That really is a special place, I would think, at the change of every season, in particular autumn. It's got to be with all the trees there, a beautiful place.
Spring, because I just wrote 2 or 3 poems about spring and how it gives hope and renewal in spring.
Yes, that's interesting, because as I'm saying that, it's like it really is a nice time of year, but spring is sort of a rebirth, and that's a time that all of us can relate to. How about Central Park and the surroundings and in New York City during the holidays at the end of the year? I've never been there during that time period, but I assume that's like another special time of the year in New York City.
Well, I used to go to all the churches with Bill. We went to Marble Collegiate Church where we met, and I went to some of the services on the holidays, and I heard Peter, Paul, and Mary at Radio City. No, at Carnegie Hall.
Oh, yes, yes. And you've said...
And I saw the Messiah at St. Thomas's.
So varied experiences that you've had in New York, and I mentioned all the writing that you've done, the various forms of writing, and I know you put together a collection that your husband had written. The book is Assumptions and Presumptions. Talk a little bit about that, because that had to be a special book for you, a collection of his work.
I put together that collection after he died.
That had to be a labor of love for you to be able to go back and to put that together. So so a little bit of him lives on in that book that you had written.
Because he kept on saying, don't assume and presume.
And that's the title of the book.
Favorite saying, don't assume and presume.
Well, that's still words of wisdom today, and that's the name of one of the books. And all of the books that we talk about in the various forms of art that Eve has available at the website, and you can get all that information by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. It sounds like you're still very active in observing and writing.
Yes, I have walked not as much in Central Park since Bill died, but when I have, it's early in the morning, and I have seen the sun really come out bright and hit the buildings, and it was spectacular how the sun hit some of the buildings on Central Park South.
That's a beautiful area, and for people, so often you talk to people that go to New York and they get caught up in the hustle and the bustle. They take in a couple of Broadway plays, they go to the Fifth Avenue, they do some shopping. I'm sure you would say, take a few minutes, go through Central Park and just enjoy. Let your senses enjoy what there is in Central Park in New York City.
I would say so, and Rockefeller Center was one of our favorite places, too.
There are so many, and yes, that's one of the places that you really need to go. Are you a people watcher? Do you just like to go to different venues and just sort of settle back and watch everybody go by?
Yes, we did.
And you can tell that in the poems, the little things that you see in the book we're talking about here specifically is Central Park, Rhapsody and Oasis. Talk about some of the projects that you've got going on. I mentioned the writing, and you do other forms of art. What all are you doing now?
I have discovered in the last year adult coloring books.
Ah, very good.
And I have done some this week.
That is an outlet for so many people, and they realize, this really seemed sort of silly when I started this, and this really is enjoyable, and you see people that come up with some really outstanding creations. We've got a couple of minutes left in the program. I mentioned in the beginning background in investing. Where was it when you really decided, art is the direction I want to lean in that direction because this is something?
I lived in a woman's hotel, and there was a woman there who did a lot of crafts, and I think I was inspired by her, and I was inspired by my grandmother.
That's interesting.
Because my grandmother did knitting and crocheting.
What I find interesting is it's one thing to have a skill set as an author. You have so many more. You were doing felt pen drawing, and we talked about watercolors that you've done. You really enjoy all these different types of art, don't you?
And I have done a lot of needlepoint, and I did an original needlepoint.
And the information on Eve is available at the website. She's got a catalog of artwork that's available. Just posted on Facebook some poems, and it sounds like, and I'll say this again, but it sounds like you may get done with our interview today and write another poem about something going on in New York City. So you're still very active in writing.
Well, New York has changed so much in the last 40 years when Bill and I got married.
Like there now, what's New York City when you go outside and you see people going by and you see the different locations and a lot of the smaller stores that you probably used to stop by back in the early days after getting married? Yeah, gone. What's it like in New York now? Is it as exciting as it was when you first got married?
No, it isn't as exciting because a lot of the stores that I used to shop in are gone, and the restaurants that Bill and I used to go in are gone. Like a Seafair of the Aegean, Mickey Mantle's place.
Oh, sure.
Rumpelmeyer's. I used to sit in Rumpelmeyer's a lot.
Well, and you talk so much about that, the Central Park aspect of that in the book, Central Park, Rhapsody and Oasis. This is a book available. Our guest on the program has been Eve J. Blohm. That's Blohm. Several websites, evejeanetteblom.com. Information there on books and other works of art that Eve has. And evejblombooks.com. Books are available at Amazon, bookventure.com, at the bookstore. Information available on Facebook as well. And, of course, you can link on to all of those by going directly to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Eve, it was a pleasure having you on the program.
I wanted to say one more thing.
Yes, please do.
I have to give my mother some credit.
Please do that
because she introduced me to the library at a young age. And she introduced me to reading, and she taught me to never stop learning.
And you can walk into...
And she loved beauty.
And you can see that in a library where it costs you nothing. You've got the greatest works in the world that you can go in and read and do research. And so many places and museums you have in New York to understand the beauty of painting and that creative form. I really enjoyed Central Park, Rhapsody and Oasis. You've really captured what New York is about. You capture people at maybe an unguarded time in their life because they're just going through the park and they're enjoying nature and the outdoors like everybody. Best of luck with all of your projects. Loved having you on the program. Thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
Our guest on the program, Eve J. Blohm, that's Blohm. Information available at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. You can link on, get all the information on Central Park, Rhapsody and Oasis, and other works of art by Eve. Just go to the website, thisweekinamerica.us. And we're back right after these messages.